Hello and a very warm welcome to Talking Germany, the show where we do just that. And my guest today is a man who's one of the biggest movers and shakers in the world of culture here in Germany, and a man who they say has a unique knack for filling the stuffy old world of museums with full, fascinating and three-dimensional life. And here he is. I can hear him giggling away in the background as I introduce him. Yeah, it's going to be quite interesting to talk to Martin Roth. Now, Martin Roth has won a huge reputation for his work as head of the magnificent museum complex in the eastern German city of Dresden, for his role in Expo 2000 and in many, many other projects. There has, though, been controversy along the way, and we will talk about that too. And I should also add that he's just been appointed as the new director as one of the best museums in the world, London's V&A. So I think we can very much look forward to talking to Martin Roth about the following topics. Return to former glory. Dresden's State Museum suffered from decades of neglect before Martin Roth helped to restore them as a national treasure. Art and politics. Another of Martin Roth's projects, the Art of the Enlightenment in Beijing, has been overshadowed by all sorts of political ructions. And in a young way, in one of Dresden's most prestigious museums, youngsters are being invited to show visitors their favourite works and explain their enthusiasm. Welcome once again, Martin Roth. Now, I want to go back to your early days, to your university dissertation, to be precise. And I read somewhere that you used your dissertation to write about how museums and exhibitions can be used to shape and project the image of how a country sees itself. And I'm very interested to hear what you would say about how you think Germany should project itself and how well it is doing so.
Yeah, quite difficult question. I was really interested in this kind of cultural politics in times where we had a really kind of changing society, mostly into 1933. And the museum was always a certain kind of niche, a bourgeois niche for those who were not really kind in politics. But anyhow, they didn't object it, you know. They were just going on, walking on. So I think one part of this German museum's history is that it was always changing, but it was always very close to the German identity. And that changed pretty much in the late 80s, when we realized with this kind of over-musealization that something has to be changed. And that's the time when the really kind of risky topics, issues that were heavily discussed, moved into the museum. And that's the reason why I was giggling, because we all, this generation, used this kind of dusty museum as an exciting place, and it was just sitting there waiting for us to come, and that's what we did. So it was nothing special. It was there to do it, and we used it.
Just give me a very quick word describing your function in all this, because you have played a very central role in all this. And in the German media, you're often described using a German term, which is a Kulturmanager. Yeah, what on earth does that translate to?
This is something I really hate. I don't like this kind of Kulturmanager, because, I mean, this always sounds like if you run a car company. I mean, sometimes it's pretty much the same if you run a museum or a car company. But then, no, if it comes to, I don't know, budget cuts and staff problems and so on. But I mean, the major issue that you have to have a real background in anthropology, art history, or whatever, so that you know from your own perspective, a kind of scientific perspective, how to organize something. And this kind of combination I was always interested in: this kind of real background, scientific background, and how to translate it.
Culture and management.
No, how to translate it. How to translate it in a way that everybody can understand it, that the media is following it, and so on.
OK. And I'll be asking you about the methods you use to do that in just a second. OK, first impressions there from the culture manager, Martin Roth. Here's more.
April 2011. Martin Roth was in Beijing performing a diplomatic balancing act. A much-discussed exhibition was being opened at the National Museum of China, The Art of the Enlightenment. Martin Roth was one of the organizers, and the German foreign minister was among those present. Shortly afterwards, the internationally renowned artist and dissident Ai Weiwei was detained in China. The exhibition, partially sponsored by the German government, became a political issue. Roth, in particular, came under fire. At the time, he was the Director General of Dresden State Art Collections, Germany's second largest museum complex. Shortly after the controversy, he was appointed director at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. In September 2011, Martin Roth will become the first German to head a major British museum. Roth didn't inherit his success. Born in Stuttgart in 1955, he grew up in modest circumstances. He graduated with a PhD in cultural sciences. In 1989, Berlin became his new home. Here he amassed his first experiences as an exhibition curator at the renowned German Historical Museum. In 1990, the fast car aficionado went to Dresden, to the German Hygiene Museum, where he organized a number of highly praised exhibitions. In his mid-30s, he became the museum's director. His ideas and concepts were persuasive. He'd mastered the art of making challenging topics accessible. In 2001, Roth became Director General of the Dresden State Art Collections, responsible for 12 museums. In 2002, a flood threatened the city's artistic treasures. Here, too, Roth showed his managerial capabilities, evacuating hundreds of artworks within hours. Now the art collections attract record numbers of visitors, thanks to billions in investments. But there has also been criticism. Huge cuts in staff numbers have been unavoidable, and there's scarcely any money left over for new acquisitions. Martin Roth and Dresden have plenty to thank each other for. But the married father of three remains a nomad in the international art scene. And today, he's our guest on Talking Germany, Martin Roth.
Martin Roth, the nomad. It's an interesting story, your life so far. There's been an awful... I'm sure it's not over, all the successes and what have you. But let's go right back to the very beginning. We learned from that report that you grew up in what were described there as modest circumstances. You're going to be living in the UK soon, and people are very class-conscious in the UK. And I think people will say possibly sort of lower middle class for your background. Coming from that background, when was the first time you actually entered a museum, crossed the threshold?
Yeah, that's a kind of very good question, because I'm really still convinced that my mother, when I was like 7, 8, 9 years old, tried to get kind of, let's say, kind of lower the step into those institutions, like the opera, the theater, and the museum, and that helped a lot. We read a lot at home and so on. You know, there was this kind of opening an institution just to understand what's going on. Not in a very intellectual way, but just to use it, to be there. And I think this is so important. This is something I learned at that time. OK, so she was opening museums, she was opening doors into museums and other cultural institutions for you. Now your job is to open doors for others, to get them inside. And I've got a quote about you. It says here that you have an outstanding capacity, you'll be glad to hear that, not just to be a guardian of dead space, but to fill museums with life. I mentioned it before, yeah? How do you do it? Is there a Martin Roth method, a concept? I mean, we speak quite open-minded.
Go on.
Everybody's laughing, but I'm a shy person. I learned in front of a camera to say I'm a shy person.
Yeah.
So if you're shy and if you are always a little bit, I don't know, timid, then you learn to take risk, otherwise it will not work. So I have to jump into a topic. I have to do something. Yeah. Quite often, without knowing in the end what will be the result. That's something I learned actually when I worked in France, that you just need the components. Don't always think about the result. Don't be safe in what you are doing from the beginning. Just take a certain kind of risk. And then it's much more exciting, quite often intellectually exciting. And that's what I did for the last 20, 30 years.
OK, and the place where you've been working for the last decade or so is a great place to be taking risks. I know that you feel very privileged to be working there. Dresden, it's a unique city. It's got a unique collection ensemble of museums. Just to explain for our viewers. But you know,
there was a chance to take risks, because without taking risk, nothing would happen at that time, because the city was still in a very bad condition.
It was in a very bad condition because of the ravages of East German communism.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, still the city partly destroyed and so on. You know, it was really difficult. I mean, they invested a lot of money to make a good professional way to show exhibitions or whatever. And they worked in an international scale, but anyhow, it was different. So we tried to raise money for construction, I mean, it's not very sexy, but for storage rooms and so on. But that's what you need to create, I mean, a fundament, a base for the future, for other scientists coming in the future to work in Dresden. So with this risk that we take, that we took that help.
Talking of risk, I mean, we were just seeing those very spectacular images. I mean, spectacular is not really the right word.
The flooding
2002, the flooding, and we were saying in the report, hundreds and hundreds of work,
more than 20,000.
Yeah. More than 20,000. Just take us back to that scene. What were you doing? Were you standing in the corner with a megaphone?
No, and you know what I'm sure you don't want to hear that, but what I learned with this, working for the Expo, I was somehow trained to have a catastrophe every day. So there was nothing you can lean on, nothing you can depend. It was always something different. So when I learned having learned that at the Expo, I realized that we have to open it to the public, the catastrophe. Everybody has to be included. We don't do it separately. We don't do it. We do it for the media. And that helped a lot. So that was the way people came to Dresden and helped us. So sure, everybody was carrying stuff and day and night, five nights and 4 days.
Were you actually, you yourself were carrying masterpieces and running away from the floodwaters?
Sure, we all did. But, you know, there's this kind of gossip going on. I remember I came to Japan a few years later and somebody said in a press conference, "You are the one with his yellow rubber boots." I said, "No, I have no yellow rubber boots." And we always saw you in TV with yellow rubber boots. I never had yellow rubber boots. I always tried to have a tie or whatever, so because I thought if my staff sees that I have no tie, then the catastrophe starts.
I have to tell you, down there at the time, I was actually sent by Deutsche Welle to be a reporter on the floods, and I wore green Wellington boots, rubber boots.
Okay, so green. Maybe we just got this one.
Okay, let's establish some facts first, Martin Roth. The exhibition goes through to March next year.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Tickets were expensive to begin with.
Yes, they were. I mean, the museum is free, but they sold tickets for our exhibition. We knew that before. I mean, it's like in Britain, you know, you have free entrance, but then you have to pay for the exhibition.
So how much were people paying initially?
I think something like €3. Now it's less. Now it's like
and is there
€1.
And are people now coming in droves? I've been told that that's not the case.
No, but you know, it's always quite difficult to talk about that. But I mean, maybe I would have done the same thing. This museum is brand new. I mean, it's an old museum, completely renovated, as you know, huge. This was a kind of pre-opening. I mean, it's even before the major opening will take place when we open that exhibition.
Yeah.
So they had to. It was like a laboratory, you know. They have to test it first. So they made some mistakes, like selling tickets only till 1 o'clock and so on and so on. In Germany, it was always taken as a political symbol. They don't want to give enough tickets to the people. They don't want, and so on and so on. But that's the wrong discussion. I mean, we should talk about the real issues, the real obstacles.
What are the real issues?
The real issues, definitely their arrest of Ai Weiwei, the way they arrested him, and so on, and a lot of. And by the way, a lot of other, not only artists but also artists till beginning of that year. I mean, China. And I'm really an admirer of that country, but China is quite difficult in these days.
You were criticised for your comments about Ai Weiwei. You sounded in your comments dismissive. Some people said you were...
I was quoted...
One museum director said, Germany's most heartless museum director. I think that was one of the quotes.
Got a lot of strange emails, meanwhile.
Yeah, I see.
I mean, positive and negative strange. I was quoted in the wrong way, indeed said, when they said, accepted his... how they treated him. Definitely not true. I just that we have to think also about all the other people that also went to prison.
Okay, fair enough. But you did say that here in my dossier that I was given about Martin Roth, it says Roth believes in dialogue with China. Full stop.
Yeah, I do. I believe in dialogue with Iran, and I believe in dialogue with Cuba, and I believe in dialogue, I don't know, with Sweden.
But we just heard the gentleman in the report saying there is no rule of law in China.
Yeah, but then we have to talk about the rule of law. Okay. You know, I mean, again, born in 1955, I'm totally educated in a way, I mean, in a very European way, after all those tragedies in Germany and these horrible times that, I mean, we are guilty. In a way that we learn that dialogue and the communication with another part of the world helps a lot to understand your own history, your own civilization, and to find a solution maybe for a better future. Come on. So, I mean, even with a religious background that we all have, I think I never learned in church that I shouldn't talk to somebody.
I must say, I really like that report. And while we were watching it, Martin Roth was telling me that one of the young women who was right at the beginning, Anna, the blonde, the girl with the long blonde hair, she is not just an informal museum guide. She is also an advisor.
Kind of advisor. It's a small group of friends of Anna, and I mean, we meet in let's say every second month and have a discussion about what's going on and what we can do for the future. And we created a series of youth congresses. Now one in India, another one in China, where we bring, youngsters together before there's this kind of déformation professionnelle. So between 14 and 18, let's say, and the question is always, what do you expect in your own biography from culture, from the arts? What institution do you want to see when you are 50, 55, my age? Mm-hmm. And that's quite exciting. I mean, it's more than just education. It's really kind of taking responsibilities.
Sure. And you've been involved in that project. Were you involved in the conception of that project?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Talking about you and youngsters, you and kids, I read somewhere, I thought this was quite nice, just a couple of years ago you were a guest lecturer at what they called the Children's University in Dresden, yeah? And you gave a lecture on the following topic: why there is no longer a king living in Dresden Castle.
Right.
What did you tell the kids?
Yeah, it was, oh God, it's a long time ago. I mean, it was quite exciting because I made a big mistake. I said in the beginning, just call my secretary to all those 800 kids, and you will get, I think it was a CD at that time, where you see all those little objects of the museum and how it works, the castle works. And before I came back to my office, all the kids already used the phone and called her. Mm-hmm. No, what I tried to do was to explain in a very, let's say, contemporary way how we use the tradition of a dynasty for democratic reasons today, and why there's a certain kind of tradition, a certain kind of history that fits perfectly. And what we have in our collection not longer belongs to a king, but it belongs to you and the taxi driver outside and the kids, to everybody. And this is so important that we accept that those collections are really the belonging. It's a world heritage, it belongs to everybody.
Yeah. And I know that something that is very close to your heart is that in Germany, one thing we're seeing, Germany at the moment, the economy is doing well. Germany is a rich country, there is no doubt about that. But one of the things we're seeing in Germany is that among youngsters, among young kids, there's a real class divide, and it isn't the division is between those who have access to culture and those who are shut out. Tell me how concerned you are about that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of programs happened during the last years to include young pupils, children, with cultural institutions, the operas, for example, here in Berlin, in Dresden, and other places, and so on. But there is this young people from so-called no-go areas. I mean, it's a difficult topic, I know. But those who have difficult family backgrounds, not only migration, but also immigrants, sometimes even difficulties to talk about the daily needs. And I mean, there's a certain way to go to school, but only a certain way. And I think we have to find new methods to include also those part of the society, also in cultural programs. I mean, it doesn't help that if you go to a museum, that will not change your lifestyle and your situation, but anyhow, it creates a certain kind of awareness, and that's what we try to do.
Okay. And it sounds good to me. It sounds like it's the only way to go.
It's a kind of awareness that we need, because, I mean, like Bertolt Brecht says, die im Dunkeln sieht man nicht. Those who are sitting in the dark, you don't see them.
Good. OK, we're going to leave it there. We don't have time for our traditional Talking Germany quiz, yeah? What a pity. You're never going to know what the questions would have been that I was going to ask you.
If you ask me if Berlin or London, I say London.
Berlin or London, he'll say London. He's got to say that at the moment. Thanks very much for joining us. He's been a very charming guest, sometimes controversial, always enlightened, Martin Roth. If you've enjoyed his company as much as I have, then do come back next week. Until then, bye-bye and cheers.